Hi, Robert.
Hi, Mushtaq. Friday lunchtime again. The sun is shining. The World
Absolutely.
Cup is nearly finished.
Absolutely. Yes. These nice nuggets of news that you give will really date this conversation, which is absolutely fine. So
I
we,
didn't
as
say which
people,
World Cup. People will be
oh
wondering which
yes,
one.
yeah, yeah, very clever, very
It's
clever
the one that
indeed.
Scotland won.
The one that Scotland won, yes, in a parallel universe, yes,
No, I
absolutely.
just mean in 150 years' time.
From today, yes, yes. After we discovered the anti-aging
Yeah,
serum that you and I have been taking, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
great. I uh, I thought today we talk about university ranking, league tables. Uh, are they good? Are they bad? What should we do with them? And I was actually doing some reflection that to, towards the fact that every year millions of students and their parents, um, members of universities, and even employers look at these ranking of universities and make decisions about them. Employers would choose to hire people from maybe universities that are only in the top 100 or top 200. Students choose whether to go to University A or University B because of the ranking. And university administrators are making decisions on what to invest in and how to manage this whole thing, the ranking and league tables and positions in it. Um, they're making decision based on that. Uh, University leaders sometimes they lose their jobs because of the position of their universities in the ranking. So it is an important map. I think this is something that we have to admit. But um, as a map, maybe it's flawed or at least incomplete or not perfect. So I wanted us to talk about maybe the cons, the pros, or maybe the pros, the cons, and potentially the future of it. And if there are any advice that we may be having for a university administrator or for an employer or a parent or a student. So that was really in my head. So what do you think?
So, as a type of map, it's a very technical type of map that requires a particular knowledge base in order to interpret it.
Mm.
And I think that's probably my hesitation about rankings in general. Is of course there are thousands and thousands of universities around the world, and of course some are better at some things, some are better at all things than others. So there are better and worse. So it's undeniable, I think, that some form of ranking would be a useful thing. But if I take out two of the things that rankings often measure and then think about them, one would be research performance.
Mm.
So if you looked at the number of Nobel Prize winners in your university and ranked from the highest number to the lowest number, I'm pretty sure you would end up with a measure of some of the most prestigious universities in the world to other universities. We don't employ any Nobel Prize winners, either of our universities, and so we would be at the other end of that table. And so the blunt version is relatively straightforward, but take a measure like field-weighted citation index. And for anyone who listens to this who's not an academic, that is relative to the norms of, say, engineering or medicine or law or business, which is your field, how many other people are reading your research? And the higher that number, the better in theory. And so that is quite a sophisticated measure, which tells you something about the quality of the research, but actually, people could really read your research and cite it in order to say this is the most outrageous mischaracterization of this theory or this data, and controversy and very poor research could perversely drive you up the ranking.
Mm.
So the most ill-informed research on this subject, because it's cited a lot, on that measure would be a positive for you. And so I am not sure that when somebody who's not an academic, who doesn't really understand the technicalities of the measure, is simply reading your university is better ranked than my university, I think that unlike a map that would take you across the underground network in London, for example, it's not easy to read as a novice. So that's one type of challenge. And then if I think about the other big thing that universities do, which is learning and teaching, student satisfaction surveys are a very common thing too. And again, my hesitation about those is you're asking a group of students, very typically, who have never done this before. Most people only do one undergraduate degree. So on a one-time experience, you're asking to rank it relative to all other people who've also had a one-time experience. So that's like, imagine TripAdvisor was asking you to rate restaurants, but you only ever ate one meal. And so your sense that this is a 5-star review would be, here is someone who goes to lots of restaurants who thinks this Italian restaurant was just spectacularly good. Their pasta was the best I've ever tasted. But if the TripAdvisor question was, you've never tasted pasta before in your life, did you like it? A 5-star review would be quite a different thing.
That's right.
And so you're right to point to the fact that rankings have huge consequences, but I think that as a type of map, they are, in one case, very technical, in the other case, as a consumer experience, a really unusual one-time reading. And all we do when it's inside our universities is compare this year's one-time reading to last year's one-time reading and say, well, our student satisfaction has gone up a little bit. That seems to be good. But I'm not entirely sure that that is telling us what we think it is telling us.
I think ranking and league tables are here for a reason. So like them or hate them, they grab attention and they influence decisions. And I do think they are serving a need as well. So for example, if I am, I'm based in Malaysia, I know very little about universities in, let's say, in South America. And if I were to go and study there or have a partnership, of course, probably the more mature way is to take a look at I don't know how many hundred or thousand universities are there, and study them and look at their history and all of that, and decide which one to approach, whether to do my studies or to send my kids to study there or have a partnership with them, or there is a shorthand. So I think the shorthand is the ranking and the league tables with all of these shortcomings. So I get why they are useful from that one point of view. The other part that I would tend to agree with you with is the way that this could drive behavior in a way that is not necessarily in the best interest of the institutions or the people. So, for example, you talked about these some universities that are ranked very highly. They have Nobel laureates and they've done great research. But these universities now, because they are highly ranked, when it comes to the quality of the students that they are attracting, would be students that they will be really needing very little teaching or support because they are very clever and they go there. While there are some other universities, if I were to rank them from the potential of value that they are adding, because they take students who are maybe struggling academically, maybe they have some other financial or social challenges, and despite all of that, take them to a level where they could become and graduate as engineers or doctors or lawyers or whatever they are doing. So if you look at the very high ranking university that takes people with very high IQ, usually they have been very successful throughout their academic career and churn them into the graduates. I think probably the value added might not be that great compared to someone who you need to first teach them English, second raise the level of motivation and self-confidence, and then only start building the academic work to get them to do what they want to do. So I think probably I think we will still be needing some form of sort of ranking, but the challenge would be what kind of ranking. And as the world changes, as the maps run out, what would be the new map that we call league table or ranking that would be helpful. I think if we could also talk about that, that would be interesting thing for the people who are listening to us.
So two reactions to that. One is, of course, these rankings now are an industry in themselves, and higher education is very much a global phenomenon now. So beyond being able to say I'm in the top something, top 10, top 100, being in the top 3,000 is not such a compelling argument. And yet I see particularly organizations like Times Higher Education or the QS rankings where there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of universities. So I'm not sure that rankings serve a purpose when you're in the mass at the wrong end or in the middle of a distribution. They're very useful advertising things to say we are a top 100 university in the world. They're not so useful to say I'm in the top 5,000 universities in the world. So that's one issue about the sheer volume of things that we are trying to produce rankings for. And that comes with a huge administrative burden, actually, in order to make a submission to tell me the data about how my university performs on these measures and then crunch the data. But to your point about, what might these rankings look like and going forward, in a sense, it would be better if there was some interactive dashboard where you could say, who am I and what am I looking to get out of this particular university experience? And therefore you tell me. So if there was some kind of AI intermediary who would ask you some things about your circumstances, motivation, future plans, and then look into the world and say, here's university choices that might be a really good fit for you. In the same way that when you buy a product in an online retailer like Amazon, it said people who bought that quite like this. When you go to buy a car or travel insurance or book a restaurant, you don't say the idea that this is the world's best restaurant of its type is not the only criteria in somebody's mind. It is, I've got about this much money. It has to be that week and they have to have availability. Or I've got these food allergies, so there are filters that you bring to that process that say the best restaurant for you in downtown KL, where you stay, might be this restaurant because it's in the right price point. It's foods that you're not allergic to. Its opening hours suit you. It's not a blanket question of this is the best restaurant in the world.
I really like this idea because basically what you are saying, the best ranking, if we could do it with technology, would be personalized. So the top 50 universities in the world for Robert McIntosh would not be the same as the top 50 universities for Mushtaq or John or Heather or Ruth or whomever, because everyone has their own needs and requirements and capabilities. Of course, this is, I think, something that would be very much welcomed by the consumers of the ranking, if this can be done in such a way. The challenge would be, what would be the business model? Because if that is, there's no business model behind it or not very profitable, then that industry that's now is a huge industry would probably resist it or not accept it. So I think between where we are now, which is that sort of one size fits all that says research would be 20% or 30%, or reputation would be another 30%, and I don't know what, another 5%, and then you create a basket of or an average indicators to say which one is top 100 and which one is not, towards reaching this ideal, I think, situation where it's what is best for you. What do we think that parents and students should do as they deal with that? Because it's a factor. They have to accept it and deal with it. So what should parents do? What should maybe employers do? Because I know, at least in China, I think there are many big companies, if your university is not in the top 200, they won't even look at your CV. And that actually drives a certain behavior at the university's level. And also, what should university administrators do? Because they are, whether we like it or not, they are under pressure to improve or at least maintain the ranking of their universities.
And really interestingly, what you tend to find is advantages and disadvantages are configured in particular ways. So the universities that do well in these kinds of ranking are incentivized to continue to participate in them. But because they do come with an administrative burden, some of the genuinely world famous, name 5 universities anywhere in the world, and if you asked 1,000 people, the ones that come out top of that list, they often will say, actually, we don't participate in this. We don't need to. So there's an elitist thing about the fact that if you are one of those Ivy League globally famous universities, this stuff is beneath you. And if you're an aspiring, improving university, you can spend a huge amount of time and energy trying to game the system to improve. And I am conscious that my colleagues at this university and other universities in my working career have done exactly that, spent a lot of time thinking about what is the methodology, what's the blend of grade point average to get accepted onto the degree, graduate outcomes, price point, research, teaching quality, etc., etc. And therefore, what do you do about that? And they actually, if you think about something I was saying a moment ago, that the elite universities tend to do very well. If you're already in the top 100, if you're in the upper end of that, you're probably going to stay there because you've got all these inherent advantages. If you're currently ranked 95th, there is a danger that unless you continue to improve, you will slip out of the top 100. If you're currently ranked 450th, your chances of getting into the top 100 are remote, actually, and very long-term. You'd have to make very long-term investments to gradually improve. And so are you better to be like the elite universities and say, actually, this is such a loaded game that I'm not going to play, I'm going to do something quite different? And so for parents or potential students or potential employers, I think they bring a lot of pre-acquired biases to that, which is, I'm really interested in brand names that I've heard of, or I'm only interested in recruiting graduates from universities like the one I graduated from. And go back to our theme around maplessness, I do think that whilst that might have been reasonably stable for several hundred years, it's probably much less stable in the last 5 years than it has ever been in my working life. And the incidence of people who've not been to university or who've been to corporate university or did some work and then went to university part-time later in life is much higher than it used to be. And the kinds of business startups that are rapidly growing, technologically sophisticated, disruptive, making their own map about how their industry works are much less likely to say, well, I only ever recruit graduates from Stanford, Oxford, or the LSE where I have studied. Yeah, because that might not be, that's just not in their kind of birth story as an organization. Our founder never did that, so they don't really value those things.
Mm. Yeah, I think these are very helpful thoughts, particularly the one that watching the fact that the world is changing so fast and so rapidly that if the ranking changes, maybe those who chose not to invest heavily in it, they might be better off compared to those who have designed their life around gaming the system. And I would also add for parents and students to first look at, when you look at the ranking, there'll be some universities that either they are far away, you don't plan to travel to, let's say, a country far away to be there. So maybe the top ones, maybe they are not the ones that you are aspiring to. You might be, but for majority might not be what you are aspiring for. But then when you look at the other universities, look at not only the ranking of the university, but the ranking of the discipline and the quality of the discipline. Because, one challenge with the ranking, because of this notion of one size fits all, sometimes it favors universities of a certain size, universities that have a wider choice of courses. But if you want to do literature or actuarial science or petroleum engineering or or I don't know, medieval English studies or whatever, there might be actually a place that's not on the ranking at all. And then you need to remain open for that, for the word of mouth, for the quality that has been produced. And I think that notion, until maybe the ranking itself becomes very personalized, there are features of institutions that make them more suitable for you, maybe because of their location, or the kind of support that they give to students, how nice the people are there. These are things that the ranking really never measures. And if you find a place that is suitable for you and will take care of you and will see you through, I think that is so valuable. So while so that I think I'm calling for a balanced view. Of course, you look at the ranking and the quality and the price and the location, but there are other elements that ought to be considered as well. And likewise for employers to remember, because sometimes people tell me a university was number 195, and then so they are in the top 200, and suddenly they go back to 230, and the same employers there, because that's their HR policy, they say, okay, I will stop hiring from that university. But you think about it, you already hired 5 or 10 or 20 people. Well, what happened to this university within a year just because some other universities were sort of, working hard on satisfying the requirement of the ranking. So anyone who goes up will push one down. And then what happened to this university that they are now suddenly they don't meet your requirements? So I think remaining open, remaining flexible and agile as employers would also be something that I strongly advise.
Yeah. And I think because we both work inside universities, we can obsess a little bit about it. If you were buying some new product, let's say you wanted to buy an automated, autonomous lawnmower. I've never bought one before. I know such things exist, but if I start Googling that, I'd find reviews and I'd see which is the 5 best autonomous lawnmowers in the world. I'd look at the price point and think, my goodness, that's $47,000. I can't afford that. This one's only $300 and it says it's not bad. So we all have these experiences of trying to make sense of a world that you don't know yet. And there is always some blend of what other people have said, what price tolerance I have. But the point that you've just made in particular, because this is not a lawnmower, this is an educational experience, nothing beats actually meeting some people who would be teaching you, visiting the campus if it's at all possible, speaking to people who've been there, because you might go to the most prestigious place and think, I really don't like the culture here, I don't feel like I belong, I don't think the staff treat me very nicely, they haven't made me feel very welcome. And you might go to somewhere which on paper looks like it's not very well ranked or well resourced or not very expert in the particular field, and think, there's something about this that just feels right. When I was leaving high school, I've chosen to do a particular kind of engineering. I went off to in the UK, you could apply for up to 5 places through the applications process. So I went to the 5 best places doing that thing. And it was pretty clear to me that some of them I thought, I don't like this place. And others I thought I could see myself being here. And it was nothing to do with their ranking, actually. It was all to do with the people I met, the atmosphere, the kind of welcome that you got. And that made a bigger difference to my choice than some empirical piece of evidence that this one ranks 14 places higher than that one. So my view is at the extremes, if you get the chance to go to one of the world's famous, whether it's a restaurant or a university or a lawnmower, if somebody offers you the $47,000 one and you can afford it, then my view would be treat yourself. It's a luxury thing. But most of us, most of the time, have to make some kinds of compromises. And so most of us have a different set of choices.
And I think because, as you said, education is an experience. It's not just a lawnmower that will do the job on your behalf. I think people need to be careful and choose something that is suitable. And that reminded me of a piece of research I read a couple of years ago. It's very well established, I feel now. So, in the Ivy League universities in the US, there are students who come from either widening participation or from slightly less privileged background. And these students usually they were, in order for them to qualify, they have been throughout their life the top of the class. So their experience is they have always been very, very good academically. Then you take them and put them in Harvard or Oxford or something like that, and then suddenly they are towards the lower end of the class in terms of academic performance. And sometimes this is not very good for them psychologically. Their view of themselves changes, their ability to succeed gets impeded, and these things are real as well. So I think it's important to pick something that is suitable. And I think your advice of, if possible, visiting the campus, speaking to someone. I sometimes I tell people, why did you choose X or Y university? And they say, we went to inquire, and the people from the marketing department were so kind and so nice. And we thought, you know what, if everybody at this university is like that, this is a good place. We want to be there.
Yeah. And I have, as I'm sure you have, hosted many, many open day talks with potential future students. And I almost always say, there's a big choice for you, and it's a big choice for us. Go and look other places. Don't just, I think this is a great place to come and study. I'm very proud of where I work, but go and try somewhere else, because it's really only by doing that you'll get some comparative sense of the chemistry of, I really like those people, I like the atmosphere, I like the buildings, I like the learning environment, I like the ethos. And you don't get that from a web page or a prospectus or a ranking. What you get is a set of claims that, come and study with Professor Al-Atabi, he's the world's leading scholar in something or other. And in actual fact, when you go to these really elite universities, your chances of meeting Professor Al-Atabi are remote, because they're so important, they're doing other things. They're not necessarily the person that teach you.
Yeah, that's so true. And I actually quite like, as people know, these conversations, we don't really plan them. We just say we're talking about this topic or that topic. And I really, really quite like the fact that we moved from talking about the ranking and the metrics and all of that, which people could just go and search, to ultimately to the human choice. And I think that is the most important thing. It's all about choosing the right thing and the right thing for you. And again, you could buy the wrong car and you could sell it. You will lose a little bit of money and then you could change it. But I think having an academic experience is a bit more deeper, a bit more personal than that. So spending a little bit more time to pick the right environment, the right place, I think, and also being part of the a group, the cohort that you study with, I think is such an important thing, because often this will be your network for life, your friends, the people who will support you. You will go out with them to the industry to work, and you progress, and you keep on supporting one another. So these are very, very important.
So just in closing, to pick up on your example of somebody who comes from a less advantaged background and is given a scholarship maybe to go to a world famous university, you can see that story could end in at least two very different ways. One is, I'd never met people who were the sons or daughters of presidents and prime ministers and chief executives, and I've got this amazing network, and I've discovered that I'm at least as good as any of them, and I now belong in this new community, and my social capital is utterly transformed. And sometimes you do hear those stories, but equally you can say, I came along, I was part of this community of ultra-privileged people who I didn't like, who didn't like me, didn't make me feel welcome. I don't want to walk their path in life. And although the education itself was great, socially, all it did was make me feel more and more different and excluded. And And I do think that is the bravest thing for any student, once you've started, is to choose to stop. And I actually think if that is in your mind at all, although we're, as university leaders, we're obsessed about trying to make sure that we get you through to the finish line for retention and progression stats, which inform the rankings. And if it's not for you, and it's a 3-year degree, and you discover that halfway through first year, I would much rather that you sat down and thought, this is not making my heart happy. And I'd be better to go off and do something else and come back to this privileged opportunity of degree level education when I'm in the right program, in the right place, at the right time in my life, rather than just saying I've started, so I'll finish doing something I'm miserable doing in a place which doesn't make me feel like I belong.
Absolutely, I think that's a very good advice. Of course, you'll do it after speaking to the right people and getting the right advice, not on a whim. But yes, I totally agree with you. And I think um, uh, until we reach the fully personalized ranking, I think it's still uh, hard work, reading about the place, going there, listening to your heart, engaging with people, and then choosing wisely. So the ranking is only one dimension of that choice, and there are other dimensions that are very important.
Yeah.
Good.
Great
As
conversation
usual,
as ever, Mustak.
absolutely, Robert. Very inspiring, very engaging, and very enjoyable. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week.
Take care, Mustak.
Take care.